Welcome to Forest and Stream, our stories, your history in the outdoors. To provide some historical and social context related to the times in which the following story was written, it is important to understand the Panic of 1873. An economic disaster that hit the United States on September 18th. At the time, known as Black Thursday, it triggered the first Great Depression in the United States and abroad, and lasted from September 1873 through 1879. Since the end of the Civil War, railroad construction in the United States had been booming. Between 1866 and 1873, 35,000 miles of new track were laid across the country. Railroads were the nation's largest non-agricultural employer. Building tracks where land had not yet been cleared or settled required land grants and loans that only the government could provide. The banking firm J. Cook & Company had been the government's chief financier of the Union military effort during the Civil War. The firm then became a federal agent in the government financing of railroad construction. However, the railroad industry involved a huge amount of money and risk. On September 18th, it became public knowledge that J. Cook & Company had overextended itself and declared bankruptcy. Following the firm's collapse, many other banking firms and industries did the same. This collapse was disastrous for the nation's economy. A startling 89 out of the country's 364 railroads crashed into bankruptcy, and a total of 18,000 businesses failed in a mere 2 years. By 1876, unemployment had risen to a frightening 14%. After the later occurring stock market crash of 1929, the 1870s economic downturn became known as the Long Depression. Imagine it's Thursday, October 2nd, 1873. Metaphysics of deer hunting. When the financial panic was at its height last week, we visited a wealthy friend whose uptown mansion is palatial, his income from safe and judicious investments always ample and assured, and his bank account invariably showing a balance to his credit of many thousands. A gentleman who dabbles little in speculative risks and who cares of state and fluctuations of the market of late do not perplex. One of those rare exceptions among men, content with sufficient and not ambitious for more. Surely his was a case not within the range of human probability to be affected by any financial crash or monetary crisis. And yet, so intricate and searching are the ramifications of disorder in times like these, when even the most provident and conservative find themselves suddenly cramped for means. And he was unable to command $1 from ordinary or extraordinary resources. Said he, "I have a balance in bank of $20,000, but all the cash I can raise is a paltry $200. It is just enough to take me to the Adirondacks. I'm getting my guns and traps together, and tomorrow I start for Paul Smith's to bury myself in the woods and seek oblivion until the storm is over. Happy the man who can thus drive dull care away at will and turn aside the impending wave of trouble. The bank to which he has confided his trusts may break in his absence and swallow all his surplus. The business, hitherto lucrative, in which he is a silent partner, may suspend and cut off his monthly income. Dividend-paying stocks may depreciate until they are quoted at half their value. Bonds and mortgages may cease to be negotiable. Still, like the ostrich with his head in the bush, he may roam the forest in blissful ignorance of his misfortunes, and follow his quest for game with a blithesome heart and a bounding step. Who would not be an ardent sportsman? Such a man as this never allows business to interfere with his shooting. We wish the same were true of the herd of speculators who squeeze values, upset the market, and set the mercantile world at their wits' end. Would that some good genius would inspire them to go off for a day's shooting and stay until the panic subsides. Ah, there is some soothing influence in this going apart to commune with nature in her solitudes that makes us forget the struggles of life and our worldly troubles. It banishes all inordinate desires, simplifies our taste, and makes us contented with mere food, raiment, and shelter, which, after all, constitutes the sole necessaries of life. This free existence among the woods, with heaven's canopy o'er us, the crisp and fallen leaves beneath our feet, and the pure untainted air to breathe, it gives us elasticity of step and expands the lungs. It enlarges the generous impulses of man. It dignifies his own self-respect. It makes him noble. Hello, I'm Brian Mookie, and I'm an American sportsman. Perhaps like you, I'm also someone who is deeply interested in our history in the outdoors. So on this show, I'll be sharing with you the stories, observations, and opinions of the day to color a historical perspective drawn from the pages of Forest and Stream, a trusted weekly outdoors journal published from 1873 to 1930. Forest and Stream will take you to the times, the people, and the events that shaped America and Americans, our ideals, our values, and our dreams. We'll seat you alongside the affluent and in the boots of everyday citizens to deliver a rare insight and an unfiltered view through a window into the past. In this journey, discover how footprints made generations ago have worn a path to where our own outdoor experiences still intersect today and affects you now. As with many historical works from past eras, there are phrases, terms, and descriptions that are inappropriate to our modern sensibilities. We in no way condone these offensive remarks or passages, but may choose to read published work in its entirety for purposes of education and accurate historic context. We hope that you enjoy this podcast, perhaps finding a new understanding or revealing a connection that moves you a little closer to touching our past. In this quiet, unconcerned existence, he finds himself moving in a new world, populous with strange creatures, with whom in time he learns to hold familiar converse. The little denizens of the stumps and hollow logs become accustomed to his presence at last. When the first sound of his coming footfall was heard, they all hid away. The first warning twig that snapped admonished them to be wary and lie perdu. All was silent as the grave, except when a rustling leaf dropped down or a walnut slipped from its opening shell aloft. But presently the head of a little gopher popped from under a dry leaf. Then his body crept stealthily out. And in a minute, with a sharp squeak to show the coast was clear, he rustled away. Then a woodpecker peered cautiously from behind the trunk of a tree and commenced to hammer, and from a neighboring limb a red squirrel sprung his sharp, shrill rattle. A garter snake glided noiselessly from under a stump and slid into a bog hole, from which an autumn frog already intoned his solemn staccato bass. As we have said, one learns to comprehend the language of these creatures. In understanding them thoroughly, wonders how any man can be so unkind and thoughtless as to blow out their little lives with powder and shot. Even the deer begin to understand him at last, and if he is harmless and uses no gun, will repose such confidence in his honor that they will actually bring the rising generations of agile fawns to drink from the very spring that supplies his camp. Then, when both have become better acquainted by closer contact, the sportsman will learn to look into their lustrous eyes as lovingly as did Don Juan into Donna Julia's, and all his conscience will rise up against him in reproof for his cruel slaughter in bygone years. His resentment will follow the hunter who dares to lay violent hands upon those innocent creatures whom he has learned to regard as his companions. If his larder becomes empty, he will have to select another locality where the deer are wild. It is only when they are running that he can make up his mind to shoot. If bucks and does would only walk gently up to the magnanimous hunter when they see him stalking in the distance, they would never get shot. Even the tiger seldom springs upon a creature that is not in motion. This is nature. We are a creation of pursuers and pursued, but not insatiable for that reason by any means. If one will not run, there will be no pursuit. If it is only human beings like the Neros, Herods, and Caligulas that butcher in cold blood, these are the metaphysics of deer hunting. He who has studied the subject thoroughly will find his thoughts yielding a responsive assent to their truthfulness. Now is the time for enjoying the full fruition of the delights which a ramble in the forest affords. Whether it be the eager pursuit of the chase, or in the simpler study of the gorgeous tints of autumn, in breathing the sharp, invigorating, frosty air, or in seeking merely a temporary relaxation from business cares, the glorious month of October yields an appreciable reward which no other month affords. This issue of Forest and Stream was made possible by these advertisers. Dr. Ward Russell's Deobstruent. Inflammation in any form. Rub it in. Cough, cold, asthma, croup. Cures sore throat, bronchitis, neuralgia, pneumonia, whooping cough, rheumatism, chilblains, strains, etc. A specific for bites of insects. The Deobstruent allays inflammation, removes the obstructions, reopens and stimulates the circulation, cleanses, soothes, and heals more rapidly than any other known preparation. For sale by all druggists. Samples free. Ask for it. Test it. Ward Russell and Company, 28 and 30, Fulton Street, New York. Carthy's Dog Soap will destroy fleas, cleanse the skin and hair from scurf and smells, making the coat fine and glossy, without giving cold or doing the least harm to the animal, and safely cure the mange. See Carthy, 12 Dalston Rise, Hackney, London. Sold by all chemists and druggists. John F. Henry, sole agent, 8 and 9 College Place, New York. Remington's. Sporting, hunting, and target breech-loading rifles and shotguns. Long-range match rifles for Creedmoor shooting, now ready. The same as won the Turf Field and Farm Badge, August 2nd, and Amateur Rifle Club Badge, August 9th. See reports. Unequaled for accuracy by either breech or muzzle loaders of any other makers. For simplicity of mechanism, ease of manipulation, quality of workmanship and material, accuracy of range and penetration without comparison. It is a noteworthy fact that though many different kinds of rifles were used in several matches, including the converted Springfield, Remington, Medford, Ballard, and Ward Burton rifle, every prize in all the matches was won by those who fired with the Remington rifle, except the last. The Remington rifle won 22 of 23 prizes at the Creedmoor meeting, June 21, 1872. Also revolving, repeating, Derringer, and vest pocket pistols and rifle canes. E. Remington and Sons, 281 and 283 Broadway, New York, or Armory, Ilion, New York. Richland Trout Farm and Pleasure Grounds. Pleasure parties will find boats, tackle, and bait on Lac La Belle, splendid picnic groves, and superior trout fishing at Richland, Oswego County, New York, on the Rome and Watertown Railroad. Pritchard Brothers, number 94 Fulton Street, New York. All kinds of fishing tackle, made and repaired with the utmost dispatch. Also constantly on hand, the best selection of trout and salmon rods, reels, lines, and flies. Medals awarded at the World's Fair and American Institute. Far our superior artificial flies. Part 2 of this episode, The Waste of Timber. A paragraph floating around states that the Indians upon the Leech Lake Reservation in Minnesota have become so enraged at the destruction of timber on their lands that they have taken the warpath and are burning the lumbermen's hay by way of reprisal. Here is a lesson for Honorable Joel T. Headley and those very few other gentlemen who deny that cutting away our forest will diminish our water supply or work out climatic and organic changes that must prove detrimental. Even the untutored savage can appreciate the value of our forest to the extent that he not only implores that the woodman spare that tree, but absolutely insists upon it in a way that is neither gentle nor kind. He realizes that the denudation of the earth is extermination to the red man, and that the deep damnation of the taking off of its timber, food, fuel, shelter, navigable waters, and means of transportation all vanish. Geology tells us that the mosses and ferns were the first vegetable products that grew upon the surface of the earth, and that the pines and then the deciduous forest trees succeeded, and after them came animal life. By inversion, it is easy to determine that animal life must perish after the trees are destroyed. It is the duty of man, by what he owes to his fellows, if not by the universal law of self-preservation, to prevent so sweeping a calamity. And man, when impelled to that sterner mood which horrible conviction brings, will not stop to agrify the question with the Honorable J.T. Headley at all, but, taking the ounce of prevention in his hands, make the advocates and defenders of timber cutting cut stick in a fashion which will throw all the devices of the Minnesota redskin far in the shade. Episode Part 3, Difference in Weights. Does a sportsman's full bag or basket ever feel heavy? For the sensation of the strap over the shoulder is doubtless very different from what it would have been if, instead of a beautiful trout, one has a 12-pound cannon shot in the basket. Indeed, this notion of weight, though absolute and positive, as marked by the scales of material philosophers, has got a variable force and significance when sentiment lends vigor to the muscles. For what sportsman helping to carry home a fine buck, or what loving husband taking a sick wife upstairs in his arms, or what young fellow on whose back fortune had, for the moment, buckled a laughing lass of 140 pounds to be carried over a slough, would feel the weight the same as if the burden were a bag of grain or a sack of salt? The Lawrences. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Forest and Stream. If you did, please do give us a 5-star review and tell your friends to subscribe. We're available on all major listening platforms. Be sure to visit our website, www.forestandstream.org, and our Forest and Stream YouTube channel for video content. Until next time, I'm Brian Mookie for Forest and Stream.